Hey everyone, Rajat here. So Microsoft recently released .NET 5. So we are going to put .NET 5 to the test. In today's video, we are going to build a small web API and we are going to learn some concepts related to building a RESTful API using .NET Core 5 framework. So let's start. So the very first thing you have to do is to download the .NET 5 SDK. So let's do that quickly. This is the link. I'm going to leave these links in the video description so you can check those out. And let's quickly download. My machine is x64 Windows. So it will take some time. Hopefully it will be completed in a minute or two. So in the meantime, let's discuss what we are going to build. So we are going to build a small API where we will get to see the total number of reported cases of COVID, right? So there is an API out there, somebody has already built it. So we are going to create a small wrapper over that API, and this particular API which we are going to build is going to contain only a single endpoint, and this endpoint will report the data back to the user, and this data will contain the total number of cases along with the total number of deaths and the total number of recoveries that have happened since day 0 of COVID-19. So the API is located here. This is the URL covid19 api.com, then the world data and total. So as you can see that we get these three numbers. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to treat this URL or this API as the backend, because API need some sort of backend to get its data from. So this is the backend we are going to build on top of. So we are just going to build a simple wrapper. The intent here is to see how we can actually use the .NET 5 framework to build REST API. So we will be learning how to fetch data from online sources and then how to format that data and serve it over to our own client. So we will see the end-to-end picture, and the .NET SDK has been downloaded. So I will just install it. As you can see that the software has been installed and we are good to go. Now we can open our terminal. This is Windows terminal which you can install, and I will just navigate to a directory. So this is just a throwaway directory I have created to create some throwaway projects. So we are going to create a new project over here. So the very first command which we need to see is the .NET -f version command, and this lists the current version of the .NET platform that is installed on the system, and as you can see it's 5.0. Okay, so .NET new helps us in creating various sort of projects, whatever we want to create. And if you have checked out my other video regarding the .NET ecosystem, you might have seen this thing. I have explained it on my other video. If you are very new to .NET, I highly recommend you that particular video. You can click on the bubble and just check that video out. You will get to know the nooks and crannies of the .NET ecosystem and what it is all about. So using .NET New, we can create various sorts of applications. Here we are concerned about creating a web API. So it is listed over here. So we have to provide this keyword to the .NET New command. So .NET New web API, because we want to create a, where is it? Yeah, web API. Okay, along with the output folder, and it is going to be vid19. So this is the name of our RESTful API, and what this command does is it creates a starter project and copies everything over from a template, and then you can just modify the code and you are good to go. Let's cd to this thing and open VS Code. So this is the source code which have been generated for us. VS Code is downloading some dependencies because it has been pre-programmed to auto detect stuff if it is based on .NET and install things. So let it do its work, and in the meantime I can show you other stuff. So the very first command which we can issue after creating a blank project is .NET run, and basically this will start the project. Okay, and now you can go to local host 5000. Okay, and this page is not working. There is one more step that is involved before you can actually navigate to the local development server, and that is the installation of the local HTTPS certificate, which is required in order to test things on the local system, because .NET by default serves even the development setup over HTTPS. So you have to install the local HTTPS certificate. So let's shut the server down first, and this is the command .NET dev certs HTTPS and then trust. So this will install a HTTPS certificate. Okay, and it is already present on my system. So basically I can just go on with my day and .NET run. But if you are booting .NET for the very first time, you need to install that certificate, otherwise you won't be able to reach the local development server. So now what you have to do is, first of all, prepend HTTPS in front of localhost 5001 and then do this Swagger. So this is the default stuff. Swagger comes pre-installed in the starter project. So first of all, we have to get rid of this Swagger thing because we do not want it. So this is extra fluff we do not actually require in our project. So there is one more thing that comes pre-installed, and that is this weather forecast route that has been pre-created for us. We do not want that. But if I can show you that it outputs this sort of data, and we do not want this thing. So we can go to controllers and delete this controller, and we can go to startup.cs, and from here we can just simply remove this Swagger stuff. Okay, this thing, and again use Swagger in these two lines, and we are good to go. Now we can just stop the server and start it again, and hopefully we won't be able to reach any of these things. So this is not here. Apart from that, Swagger is also not here. Okay, now we can start the actual development of stuff. So basically, let's talk about the folder structure. So controllers is the folder which contains your controllers. We will talk about it. The startup CS is the file which is actually responsible for booting up your web server and configuring things, and if you want to plug in services, this is the file where you do it. So if you want to introduce services in your REST API, you just plug it over here. Okay, and then also let's talk about this program CS. Again, this is the actual web server stuff. Okay, so you do not have to concern yourself with any of these files. We can also get rid of this thing because this is basically the model for the weather forecast file which we have just deleted. Okay, again let's boot this thing up after deleting so as to check that everything is working. Okay, now let's first of all decide the routing part, because that is quite essential and quite central to building a REST API. So we simply want to build an API which is reachable at this COVID-19, and you can say world. So basically this will be our final route on which the data should be visible. I mean, this data should be visible on this route. As of now it is not here. We have to create it, right? So in our startup.cs we have got this thing, use endpoints. So here they have told the framework that they have to map the controllers. So it is pre-programmed in this particular statement that it can auto-locate controllers from this particular directory. So what we are going to do is we are going to first of all create a controller. and then I will explain routing in more detail. So let's stop this thing, and now we have to issue a bunch of commands. First of all, we have to install this thing, or better, I can just point here. We have to issue these commands in order to get this ASP.NET code generator, and this code generator will help us in creating a controller scaffold. Scaffold is basically a starter code which we do not have to write by hand. ASP framework can generate it on its own depending upon the keyword which we have provided here. So we can generate all sorts of starter classes like controllers and services and things like that. So just issue these commands, and this will download all the starter templates and all, which you can later use. Again, I will leave all of these instructions in the video description, so make sure you check those out. Okay, now we need to create an actual controller. So let's write it by hand. .NET ASP.NET code generator. Okay, and then we have to generate a controller. Then again we have to provide the name. So we are going to create a COVID-19 controller. Okay, and then we can do this async so that all the actions are async by default, and then API because we want to create a RESTful controller, and then the output directory where this controller should be created. So out there, and that is going to be controllers, as you can see here. So this will create a controller. Our controller is now created. So let's talk about these annotations. So basically a controller is a class which implements or extends from a controller base class. This API controller demarcates that this is the controller. So the .NET framework can do stuff under the hood and locate this controller on its own without us providing any sort of plumbing code. It can auto locate that this is a controller, and it can be used for serving web requests. This is the route this controller is approachable at. So API is the prefix, as we have seen here. API is the prefix. So the server address, then the prefix. So this is that prefix API. Then the controller name. The controller name is everything before this controller part. So this trailing controller part is just for the sake of the .NET framework, and everything before this controller word constitutes the controller name. So if I do this API controller slash, then it means that if I type in API and COVID-19, so COVID-19 is actually the controller name over here, I can reach this controller using this notation. Okay, so I can just simply remove this and I can reach it. So let me show you. So let's start. First of all, let's add a get method. So in order to create a HTTP get method, you have to write this annotation on top of a public method which you are going to create inside your controller class. So you can name it anything as of now. So I can just call it hi. Okay, and then I can simply return hello, and the string is the return type over here. I'm simply returning a string. This is a very simple controller. I can simply run the server and reload this stuff, and as you can see that there is this hello. So this is how it can work. If I am going to remove this API from here and there is this controller thing, simply I will be able to reach this controller and this particular method using only the COVID-19 stuff. Now it won't be visible on the API stuff. Okay, because there is no such prefix now. There is one more thing. We haven't provided any call to this hi, but still things are getting resolved. So by default, it is just simply checking if there is any get method, and if there is any, it is just simply returning it without doing any checks for whether I have called for hi or whether I have, actually requested the hi route or not, because it simply does not know. The logic is not yet there. So let's first of all, revert it back to API/controller. And let me also create one more HTTP get route public string hello. So now I am demonstrating that how the auto resolution works. So if I run this thing now and request the data again, I will get an exception because now there are two HTTP get methods. Now it does not know which one to serve to the end user. When there was one, there was no conflict. So the .NET framework already knew that the user is requesting some get data and how to locate it, because there was only one get method. But now there are two, and hence the .NET framework is confused. So this is one thing which you have to take care of. Now there is one more notion of action. So whatever public methods that are there inside your controller are also known as actions. We can also do stuff like this thing. So now our route will become API COVID-19 for this controller, then action hi. So if I request API COVID-19 hi, which is this thing, this method or this action will execute. If I do API controller API COVID-19 and hello, this method will execute. So this is the complete stuff. This is how the routing works. If I leave out the controller part and just the action part, I can also do that. So let me first of all show you this controller action thing. Stop the server, rerun it. Hopefully I will be able to reach COVID-19 hi and hello. And if I do hello over here, I will be able to see hi. So both of my routes are working correctly. If I want to remove this controller stuff, I can also do that. And now my API routes will be API/hello. Now the controller name is not there, only the action name is there. So hopefully that might have given you a quite insightful look into the basics of routing in this .NET Core ecosystem, right? So I just quickly wanted to talk about it. So we are going to stick to API controller and then action notation. Okay, and then we are going to create a simple route over here. Okay, world data or simply world. Okay, and here I can write will return world's data, and we just want to check that things are working correctly. So this will be our final route. So let's request the actual route which we are trying to build, COVID-19 and world. So now it says will return world's data. So our routing is working correctly. Now we have to build the logic to fetch the data from the API, which is this API. Now we have to fetch the data and serve it over to the actual route which we have built, right? So now I am going to introduce one more concept to you guys, and that is the concept of services. So controllers basically are responsible for taking in the request and handing it over to the services. So services are the parts where you actually write the business logic. So controller themselves are not responsible for handling the business logic part. Those are services. Services can actually talk to the data sources and all in order to gather data from everywhere and serve it over to the controller. Controller just simply takes in the request and returns the data. So that is the sole responsibility of any controller. So we are first of all going to create a new folder over here and call it services. Inside this folder, we are going to create a new file. We will call it COVID-19 services.cs because this is going to be a class. Now we can start writing the definition. So we are going to namespace it. Since the application name is COVID-19, so this is going to be the namespace. Then we are going to create a public class COVID-19 services. Okay, so here we are going to build a method which will actually fetch the data from the actual API. So public async, because it is going to take some time, it's a network request, so by default it is going to be an async task. Okay, then we are going to create a return type, and the return type for this function is going to be a task. So if there is a long running process, it has to have the return type of task, and inside this task we have to provide the data model of the actual data it is going to return. So we are also going to create a data model for it. Okay, and then the name word stats. Okay, this is the name of our method. Here as of now I can simply type will return data. So as of now we are just building the boilerplate so as to build proper harness. So as of now it is returning string, so I have provided the return type of task string, and as of now nothing is async, nothing has been awaited. So we have to plug this service in first of all. So in order to plug this service in, we have to go to startup.cs, and over here we have to write services add transient, then COVID-19 service and this thing. So basically what we are doing here is that the .NET Core framework uses dependency injection in order to resolve the dependencies. So if our controller wants to use this COVID-19 service, it is not directly going to import the class. It is going to request the instance of this service from the .NET framework. It is the responsibility of the .NET framework to first of all create the instance of this service and then provide it or inject it into the controller. This way the .NET framework can actually keep tabs on what is being used and how to optimize the access and everything related to services. And this is very similar to what we have seen in the Angular land. So basically Angular also uses this sort of dependency injection. So you don't create the instance of the class, you just request the instance of the class from the framework itself, and the framework knows how to create an instance using this thing. So we have plugged in the service into our startup code. Since we have used this COVID-19 service class, we also have to use the using statement in order to import it. So COVID-19 services, okay, not these services but the capital one. So hopefully things will work now. It says it does not exist. Okay, I made a mistake over here with 19.services. That was the reason it was not able to resolve. Hopefully now it will resolve. Task could not be found. Again, I have forgotten bunch of imports. So basically here as well you have to type in using system.threading.task, because this task thing is located under this particular namespace, so we have to import it. Let's see what other dependencies are missing. COVID-19 service could not be found. Why is that? It's not services, it's service. I have made a bunch of typos, I would say. Okay. So it is just simply reporting a warning that nothing has been awaited on. So why the method has been marked async. So as of now we do not have to concern ourselves with it. We simply are building the plumbing code as of now. So now we can actually call this service from this controller method. Okay, so how to do it? So first of all, we have to create a private read-only member of COVID-19 service. Okay, so it is going to be named this COVID-19 service. Okay, and again, since we are using COVID-19 service, we have to import it. That is going to be COVID-19 services. So it is inside this namespace, and then we have to create a constructor for our controller, and inside this constructor we are going to inject COVID-19 services instance. So this is simply an instance we have requested from the framework itself. How this gets resolved is none of our business. The .NET framework will do it on its own. We will get it at the end of the day. We do not have to concern ourselves with how this thing actually works. We will get an instance of COVID-19 service which we can later on use. So we are just simply going to allocate it to the internal member we have created for ourselves. So COVID-19 service, and now we can use this COVID-19 service and call the actual method. So again, since that was an async method, await, then COVID-19 service, then get word stats, and let's see if this stuff works. It is not working, and we have to mark it async because there is an await inside the body of this action. Now we can see that there is this error. The return type of async method must be void, task, and things like that. So by convention, the actions are supposed to return the data of type action result. So this is the convention. So action result can be anything. Action result can be of type string. So this is the the parent class of the data that is being returned by any action. And since we are awaiting something and this is the async thing, we also have to take care of the task. So task async and then string. This is going to be the actual return type because we are returning data, but by convention we actually return the data of type action result. And since this is being awaited on, we also have to take care that it is marked as of type task of async result of string. I hope I was able to explain that stuff properly, and now we can do the reload and we can see will return data. So basically this data is coming from over here. Now earlier we talked about that we are going to return the data, and that data is going to come in this format. So basically there are three fields. So let's create a model for this data. So here they have called total confirmed, total deaths, and total recovered. We can just simply remove this total from here, and we can just simply call our data as a collection of three fields: confirmed, deaths, and recovered. So let's create a folder first, models, and inside this folder create a new file, and this new file will be called stats.cs. Again the namespace thing, COVID-19 and models, and again a public class stat. Now we have to create three members. Since the numbers are quite long, I have chosen the long type, but you can play around and use whatever numeric type you want to use, right? I think that long makes proper sense here, so I just used it. I haven't put so much thought into it. You can experiment, right? So long then first field can be confirmed, and again the getter status. This is how you create getter status. Public long deaths get set, public long recovered, again get set. Okay, so this is our data. Now we can plug this thing into our service. So instead of returning a string, we are actually going to return the stats, which actually represents our data, and we also have to import the model. So 19 model. Okay, as of now we are not returning stats. Let's quickly build that logic as well. So first of all, we have to create an HTTP client in order to fetch the data. So let's create a private member of this particular class, which will be a HTTP client. Only HTTP client, and then client, new HTTP client. Okay, so this is going to be the client which we are going to use in order to fetch data from the actual API, this API. And let's import the namespace as well. So it lives inside system.net.http. Now we can use it inside this get world. So now first of all, we have to make the call to the get stream async method of this client. Let me show you. World stat task, and we have to create the client, and then get stream async. Over here you have to provide the URL. This is the URL from where we want to request the data. Plug it over here. Now this should be awaited on and fed into a JSON deserializer, so that we can get the data back into a format where we can process it further, because this thing is going to return the stream. You cannot simply consume the stream because it is not in a consumable format. So first of all, we have to plug it into a stream reader. So JSON deserializer is also a kind of a stream reader. So JSON deserializer can also pass the data and auto-populate the output based upon the fields that are there in the input data. Okay, so this thing is going to return a stream, and that stream at the end of the day will contain this data. So we can simply plug this stream into our JSON deserializer. To do it, we have to write word stats and then await and create a JSON deserializer, serializer dot deserialize async, and then the data type of the expected data. So in our case, that is going to be stats, because we are expecting the input data to contain fields that are there in our stats, right? So, and then await this task. So basically this thing will get resolved first of all, and then it will be fed into the deserializer. The deserializer is programmed to pass the incoming fields and auto-populate the output as per the stats model. So stats model has these fields. So if these fields are there in the incoming data, it will be auto-populated with the correct values, and then it will be provided to the word stats, and then we can simply return word stats. So now everything works. So word stat will be of type stats, and as you can see, it is also returning the data of type stats. So hopefully everything will work. So it is reporting an error. It cannot convert this type to this type, and if we can go to the controller thing, Here we have given this string thing, so we have to change it back to stats. We're not changing it back, we are just changing it for the very first time actually. So width 19 and then models. So let's boot the server again. So JSON serializer does not exist. Again we have to import things. So JSON serializer actually lives in the namespace system text and JSON. Okay, things have started and let's see. As you can see that fields are all zeros. We are supposed to get these numbers, but we haven't gotten those numbers. The reason being because in the incoming data, the fields are called as total confirmed, total deaths and total recovered. But in our model, the fields are called confirmed, deaths and recovered. If the field names were total confirmed, total deaths and total recovered, this particular statement would have mapped the data or the values perfectly without any issue. But when it was actually mapping things, it did not find any property known as total confirmed. So these things have been initialized to the default value of 0. So there is one more thing we can do here, and that is mapping the actual names in the incoming data. We have to use this annotation JSON property name, and this annotation will tell the name of the incoming property that should be mapped to the actual field inside the model. So the incoming property is total confirmed and it should be mapped to the confirmed property of my stat class. So we have to write total confirmed. Let me copy it from here and put it over here. And this JSON property name lives inside the namespace of using system text JSON and then serialization. Let's reboot the server. Okay, I made a typo. So as you can see that the total confirmed are now populated correctly. Similarly, we can do for the other two fields. We can call them total deaths. These are deaths. And then again total recovered. Let's reboot the server, and if we go here we will get to see the correct data. Now this data is similar to this data. So now our wrapper is complete. So this is the end result which we actually aimed for while starting this video. So hopefully now you know how to create a very basic REST API which can fetch data from online services and show it to the end user. So you can easily create some sort of aggregator API which gathers data from various sources and show it to the user. Or maybe you want to do some stuff with the getter data and process it, store it somewhere and then later show it to the user, or show it to the user in the real time. So there are several scenarios which you can cover using the stuff we have talked about in this video. In the follow-up videos, I will also show you how to actually request stuff from the database, how to plug the business logic into the application, how to do other sort of stuff like making post request and saving stuff into the database using the similar sort of REST API. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. In case you like this video, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, because that will really boost my enthusiasm and will push me to create more content for you guys, because you guys are the lifeblood of this channel. In case I do not get any traction, I sometimes do get really demotivated because nothing, is producing any sort of result, and it is very counterproductive, right? So make sure, in case you like something, to support the channel and share it with your network. In case you have any video demands, or in case you want to learn any technology that is out there and you wanted to learn, maybe leave a comment on this video or any video for that matter. I check every single comment that you guys leave on this channel. In case you are interested in asking more personal questions related to IT and software development and all, there is a Discord link in the video description which you should join, because I am creating a community of people who are interested in learning to code and interested in joining the IT industry, or they want to just get a fulfilling career in IT. So for all of such folks, I have created the Discord channel, so make sure you join. Also, if you head over to codelet.dev, there is a email list you can subscribe to. So I am also creating this email list where I will be sending you guys some tidbits about the content I have created over the weekend, or the interesting stuff I have read or learned over the week, right? So I will send these newsletters weekly, so make sure you go to codelet.dev and put in your email, and I will start sending emails pretty soon. So these are the two areas you should join. The first one is the Discord channel, the other one is the email list. I see you guys over in the next video. Take care. Bye.